Good morning, YouTubers, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from all over the world. This week we're working on some more items that go on the decks and below the decks. So these are two of the hatch covers for the stairway. I just finished gluing them up. They'll go on there. Like so. And then this guy. Right over there. Like he goes near the front. This is probably the exhaust chimney from the stove. It's outside of this leg here. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm assuming it's from the stove because I made up all these little brass rod pieces to go in there for handles. And then all these are pewter pieces that we painted and glued together. It's like 6 pieces there that are glued together, plus this handle. And that's going to go down under the deck somewhere. There is one picture here I saw. Yes, it's showing right there under the deck, which would be near where that chimney's at, which that's why I'm thinking that stack down below goes up to that. I'll have to figure that out for sure, because they're not showing it on this drawing. Should be up here somewhere. I don't see it. So, in any matter, in the process of step 61, we finished putting together that stove, the cooking stove, and the hatches. So now we got to do the bilge pumps. There's 2 of those, and then we got to fashion out of some of this. If I can get here, I think this is 4.5 millimeters brass strip, and we got to fashion these 2 shapes out of that to make a hinge with a pin. And that'll be for the railing door. So there'll be a door here on this railing on both sides. So that'll be one thing I'm going to work on doing, and then putting together all the pieces that are involved with the bilge pumps that hook up to these tubes here. So that's what I'm going to play with next. And as you can see, the photographs are showing more and more stuff. We got pin racks to go on the outside of the ship, and a stairway, ladder steps, and all kinds of goodies. So fun, fun, fun. So as you can see here, we took this brass strip. We use these KitchenAid because they've got teeth that actually grab the edge before you cut, so it won't slip in the scissors. And you can see I started the second one. So next thing I'm going to do is put this in the vise and bend this until it breaks off. At that point I'm going to score it, and that'll give me two tails that I can bend into a cup shape to do the outside. And then we'll do the opposite. We'll leave the center one and cut the outside two off and make an opposite, so we can simulate this hinge. And we're actually building the hinge from a piece of flat stock brass. So obviously that takes a little bit of finesse. So right now I'm going to score this center one because that's the one I'm going to cut off. I'm going to just put it in the vise like my thumb is grabbing it, and then I'm going to bend it back and forth with the pliers till it breaks off. See if I can get you here where you can see what I'm doing but not be in my way. Let me get my tweezers. Sort of want to grab it in the vise right where I'm going to break it off at. Get a good grip on it. Pull this one out of the way a little bit. Same with that one. See that tail there? Just bend it till it breaks off. I scored it so that helped it break easily. So now I'm going to pre-bend the end of the cup. Let me use these other pliers because it gets me away from the edge of the vise. Just sort of get that started. I want to try to get a little more cup bend on the very end of that piece. And it's not cooperating. Those pliers don't have any teeth on the inside, so they don't grip it like I want. I'm going to turn this around. So I got the cup shape started. So now Let me grab the hinge pin. Just lay that up there. That's why I say it takes a little finesse. So I'm grabbing the hinge pin with my pliers. I want to hold it up. My piece moved in the vise, so I got to straighten it back up. And I'm trying to set it in the vise where the opening of that center part is almost flush with the vise. Get a better grip on it. These tweezers in there. Now I'm closing up the bottom around that pin. There. So that side's done. We've trapped that pin in there. So now we'll take the shears and back over here. See, it's a little crooked, but I'm going to straighten that up when I get the two pieces together. See how it just cuts that right off? And then I'm going to cut the corners off. Like so, and that part is ready to accept the opposite on this other part. So first I'm going to flatten, get my other pliers. I want to flatten that end from where the scissors cut it, and then I'm going to take the razor knife and score where I think so I'm going to put a mark here. gonna mark so those two marks, I know that should fit in there. And then I want to go back enough to make this cup shape of the middle piece. So it's usually 3 times the length, 3 times the thickness of this bar. So you got 1, 2, and then the mark is going to be back here somewhere. It's just visible. So take the shears now. Putting that cut edge right on my mark. And then make sure it's straight and dive into it up to the other mark. Okay. And do the same thing over here. I'm right just past that mark I made in the middle horizontally. And then now I can just use the shears to cut these 2 tails off. All I got to do is dig in there a little bit. At the right spot. Then take the pliers, break that off. So now we'll do the same thing we did with the first piece over there in the vise. And then we'll take those 2 and line them up. And on the first one I did, I had to, before I actually got the pin in there, on the one with 2 tails on it, I had to put a little file in there and file back enough to accept this centerpiece where they could get close enough to each other to line up with the pin. And that took a little bit of finessing too. And then of course I grab it again with the vise and I file one end of the pin where it's nice and flat and it has some burrs hanging out on the edge. And after I get that like I want it, I cut the other side off with the cutters, giving me a little bit like a millimeter or 2 sticking out, and then I grab it again in the vise and file that until it's really close like it is here with some burrs hanging out, and that'll keep the pin from falling out, hopefully. If not, we can put a little dab of super glue on probably one side and it'll still turn in the middle, because the middle's where it's going to turn at. And that's how you make the hinge. that they're showing here out of some brass stock, and that'll give us a point to hinge this railing handle, sort of like a gate that'll hinge up out of the way so you can go down to your lifeboat or come back up the ladder, because you see the ladder we got to build on the side of the ship accesses that spot where we're creating that hinge door, so you can get back on deck without climbing over the railing. So that's how we make the hinge. Okay, another progress report. We got the channels on for the foremast and the brackets, the channel brackets on both sides. So that'll accept the bottom part of the dead eyes for mast support. And went ahead and glued down the hatches. After I glued them down, I worked on making the bilge pumps. But being a retired electrician, I said, oh, that's brass. I can solder those together. You know, I tried to solder the tube on the side there, and of course that worked okay, just fine. But when I tried to solder on this pewter piece, that did not work. So you can see this one's scratched up a lot more than the other one is, and I ended up filing all the solder mess off because I could not get that pewter piece to bond to the brass with the regular soldering gun. If I had a torch, I could probably have done it. But anyway, ended up super gluing the second one, and I went to install this in there below the decks, and I noticed it was too tall, so I had to file off the top of the chimney to get it to fit in there. And I probably got some other work to do to it before I can get it to mount permanently. But these will go down onto those tubes like that. I haven't glued anything together over there yet. But we did get them completed and ready to install. And then of course in the last shot we were working on making these hinges from a piece of flat brass stock. So I got those installed, and after installation I'm looking at them and thinking that maybe I should add some more rail up here. So they got something to mate into, and then the picture and the instructions show a little brass piece wrapped around the end. So I might do that and make a place where it lays in there properly, and make a railing that's wider to sit on top of this railing. So I haven't quite figured out what I want to do there yet, but I got to do something different. And the picture and the instructions also show this board being shorter. So I did make this longer to match up with that shorter cut. And it shows that piece in the middle. So, not resting necessarily in the middle, but it shows it overhanging that post a little bit. So I got to figure out what I want to do there to make that complete. So in the meantime, these are the little brackets that hold on the channels for the dead eyes, and each one of them's got to be sanded up and shaped properly to fit against the wall of the ship and against that channel board. So I got the foremast done. I'm looking at the plans next to see the next thing to do. Probably do some more channel boards and get them all done. And I won't have to worry about channel boards anymore. And then another thing since the last video shot is these stanchions. We got 10 of them, 2 in the front on each side and 3 in the back on each side. And these are for the little hand operated cannons. I'll show here on the print. It's a cannon that swivel mounts onto the top of that stanchion. And one there, here. So there's 10 little cannons that mount on top of those stanchions. And those had to be all shaped and filed and fitted so they would go over this rail and mount up against the wall of the ship real good. The 2 in the front on each side, I used a little pin to give them some extra support. But that's for little cannons, which is later on the install. So I'm going to continue working on creating more of these channels for the dead eyes and getting all those little support brackets mounted. I think there was 16 of those total that mount on there, plus drilling the holes in the right spot and rounding the corners and then shaping the inside of the board so it fits against the edge of the ship right. So I'm going to continue on with these channels right now. Oh, we're making good headway. Okay, we're shaping these pieces, the braces, the bracket for the channels. We had to sand off a little of the bottom, and then we put it in the vise, and we opened up this corner a little bit so it would fit in there, and the top is just right. So in accordance to where the cannon door is, and a dead eye here and a dead eye here, spreading out so it doesn't interfere with the cannon. And looking on the prints up here, the next bracket goes on in between those 2 dead eyes, just toward the bow from that cannon. And the dead eye next to the cannon opening, I'm looking at the drawing here to make sure I'm going to go in the right spot. And then I'm looking at it straight from the side to make sure that it's plumb up and down. Oh, drop my clamp. And I'm just clamping it You can see it wants to go in toward the ship on the top, and that clamp is interfering with that when I pull down on the bottom. So I'm going to leave that clamp off because it'll pull it away from where I want. So now the last one for this side. You can see there it's not touching the channel and it's a little high, so by the time I file out that notch in the corner and let it come down, it might clear the top, but we'll have to still sand off the end out here a little bit. Maybe not, because once I open that corner up, it's going to go down and back. So what we're doing here, just clamping it in there where it's fairly square with the vise. Go over and down, and this takes off quite a bit of material pretty quick, so it's easy to get too much. And then I use this edge file because it's got a nice sharp corner on it, filing on both sides, to open up that very inside of that corner. So let's see how that fits. And one side of this bracket has got a little bit fatter. So you can see there, it's not setting on the channel, but it's setting on the wall. They are shaped where they're not quite 90 degrees. They're a little wider than 90 degrees. They're probably 92 degrees or something. So that means this channel needs to come up some. Or I got to take some off the back side here on the bottom. So I'm going to do that on the sandpaper. Just a couple swipes and see what happens. So in doing that, we lost some of our depth. So I need to not open that corner up some more on the top part here, so it'll go down. I'm going back into the vise. There we go. Time we clamp that, we're pretty much touching on all three sides. I'm just looking at it from both angles. The corner needs a little bit more opened up. Doesn't take much for that file, it's pretty coarse. So as you can see, it's fairly tedious to get a good fit, so I'll put some glue on it and clamp it and see what happens. I'm re-grabbing it with tweezers here because my fat fingers will not fit in there for this glue up. Voila. So there is the channel with the holes in it for the dead eyes and the support brackets for the main mast. The main mast is going to be up here, and the wind blows the ship forward, so the ropes tie toward the top of the main mast at a little bit of an angle toward the front of the ship to support the force of the wind. So this whole channel needs to be back set from where the mast is. You can see there the channel, and then the mast is up here. So all these ropes will go forward toward the mast, toward the ship, because the wind is blowing this way most of the time when their sails are out. And those ropes will support that force of the wind on the mast. And that's why the channel is so far back. So now I got the other one shaped and drilled. I've got to file the back of it to fit the curvature of the hull, and then round off the outer corners, and that'll go on the other side of the ship. And then you can see the last two are short. They've only got 4 dead eyes on them. And we'll do that after we get this one done for the main mast on the other side of the ship. Well, that gives you an idea of what's involved in installing those channels. For the dead eyes. And the shrouds.